So welcome everybody. We've got a couple of people that may join us. There's probably with the tube or something, but we're going to get started. So welcome to this event, Data Science versus Statistics, is it the Emperor's New Clothes? It was pointed out to me that not everyone may know the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. Do we have anyone who doesn't know the story of the Emperor's New Clothes? Does everyone know what we mean by that? Yeah? Everyone's heard the fairy story? Okay. I won't go into that. So this event's being run by the Professional Statisticians Network. We used to be called the PSF, F for Forum. Now it's the PSN, N for Network, because we thought it better represented what we were trying to achieve. And it's a subgroup of the Professional Affairs Committee. So for those who don't know about the structure of the RSS, the Professional Affairs Committee is one of the kind of governance groups that deal with everything professional. But the PSN really represent the statisticians and not statistics. So we're really here to support statisticians in terms of their career development, especially if there's somebody who works as part of a remote team or they're not working in a company where there's lots of statisticians. So why this event? So probably 18 months ago now, we started to have a discussion in one of the PAC meetings about data scientists, and there were a few kind of random comments about data science means nothing, and so apologies to anyone who's a data scientist. And it started a discussion which was really, what does the world see as data science and what does the world see as statistics? And is there a difference? Where are the overlaps? And it became very apparent very quickly that if we couldn't agree amongst ourselves, what was the rest of the world thinking? I spoke to one of my colleagues who was very dismissive about the whole idea of data science. We're both statisticians, and she was basically just saying, well, it's just ridiculous. She said, all this big data and data science, it's just Emperor's New Clothes, it's just a load of rubbish. So that kind of, got us thinking about the title, and we thought really the best thing to do is put it to a group of people who are perhaps interested in both data science and statistics and see what's everyone else thinking about. And I know the data science section, you've had a similar event discussing this topic, and it's something I think that's in the background of lots of people's minds as they go about their jobs, analysing data and meeting the general public who perhaps don't know anything about analysing data and hearing their opinions on what we can do with data. Before we start, because he can't be here, I've got some points that were raised by John McInnes, who is the Vice President of the Professional Affairs, and he's chair of the committee. I'm just going to give you a brief kind of paraphrase of what he was talking about, because I think it's useful to sort of start the discussion somewhere, because this is the type of discussion that could go anywhere. So it'd be good to perhaps give it some kind of framework. So he says he thinks it's useful to distinguish policy speak from what actually goes on, because policy speak is really about the vaguest of ideas about what goes on, and it's mainly driven by fashion and the desire to seem up-to-date and exciting. Hence the enthusiasm about big data, artificial intelligence, data science, etc., and is proclaimed by many people who haven't much idea about statistics or data. And this tends to exaggerate the pace and scope of change. And he goes on to say it's good to remember that on the other side of data abundance is the workforce, where a majority struggle to reach the level of maths knowledge expected for even 10 or 11-year-olds, and enterprises and organisations where the limits of their data analysis are actually set by Excel. So he says that there's very, very few organisations who use advanced data science or statistical skills, and many data engineering problems are actually just ones getting old and incompatible legacy systems to communicate with each other and provide very basic information like customer lists by area or by product. And he says the science of statistics has always been in evolution. Today, one aspect of that evolution is developing forms of inference that deal with the peculiarities of found data, often at scale, so that instead of the key problem being sampling variation, it may be estimating the relationship between the process generating that data and some underlying feature of the world that might influence it and in which we are interested. And his key point he wants to emphasise is that this needs to be done carefully, and probably more carefully than is often done at present. he goes on quite a lot about Fisher and things. But basically, he's saying a large amount of data is not always as beneficial as it is sometimes assumed to be, and a small random sample of high quality information may be both cheaper and better than lower quality population data. So that's just something to bear in mind, one side. I've also got a kind of alternative viewpoint from Tom Smith at the Office of National Statistics. He says, my team at the Data Science Campus uses image and raw text data to produce statistics outputs. The techniques to use image and text data are not ones statisticians are traditionally familiar with, but that are very much in the data science toolkit. Image classification, deep learning, natural language toolkits, etc. So it's clearly not correct that statistics is the same as data science. So another opinion. So there's several key themes here, and I'm sure that Noel-Ann, our speaker, who I'll introduce in a minute, will touch upon some of these in her talk. And then after Noel-Ann, we're going to have the panel discussion, once we get all the members of the panel here. And I'd like really if we could, again, try and put some framework and keep to the key themes that seem to keep coming up. So we've got one really about training, hiring and accrediting data scientists. Another one is about communication to those who are completely outside of stats and data science. So how do we talk to the public and businesses about what statistics and data science are? And then finally one really about standards and oversight. So how do we ensure that businesses know what they're getting when they get data scientists? So I'd like to introduce our speaker. We've got Noel-Ann Bradshaw here, and she informs me that she'd rather introduce herself and give you the background of where she's come from. So if we can give Noel-Ann.
Brilliant, thank you very, very much. So, in order to introduce myself, what I wanted to say was that I'd undertaken a maths degree as a mature student not that long ago, for various reasons. And then I went into becoming a lecturer in mathematics and operational research at the University of Greenwich, stayed there, got into management and became Director of Employability for one of the largest faculties at the University of Greenwich. At the same time, I also became interested in data. So I was putting on courses for maths undergraduates about how they could learn all the sort of tricks of understanding data so that they could then go into jobs where they were data analysts or masters to learn how to be proper data scientists, I hasten to add. But the point was, I was coming into contact with a lot of employers of data scientists, and if there's any university people out there, what you don't do is put your university academics, who are quite numerate, who have got reasonable communication skills, in front of employers who might offer them tempting salaries. Mm-hmm. So what happened was I jumped ship and ended up at Sainsbury's Argos as a data scientist and operational researcher. I have to say I've actually recently resigned for personal reasons. My mother's not well, and I'm going to go back into academia come December, which says a lot, but I won't go into that. I'm also Vice President of Communications for the IMA, but no booing and hissing, please. So we want to work together, obviously. So, why have I been asked to talk to you about on this topic? I should have said at the beginning, thank you very, very much for the invitation. What intrigued me about this was the title. So, Emperor's New Clothes, because this was a phrase that I'd used at work on numerous occasions when talking about data scientists or machine learning algorithms. Quite often I'd come out with, but isn't this just the Emperor's New Clothes? So, and I thought this was just me. And actually some people at work didn't know what this was, what the Emperor's New Clothes were. So I'm just intrigued about this and thought, yeah, actually I've got some thoughts on this and it would be interesting to share them with you. So while I was thinking about this, these are the things that have come to mind. So don't shoot me, don't sort of say, oh no, that's all wrong. This is just what I've been thinking of as I've been preparing this. And I need to say from the outset, I'm not a statistician. I don't even think I'm a particularly good data scientist in the sense that I've only been doing it for 18 months and I haven't got a master's in data science or anything like that. So what have I thought? Well, I've been struck by the fact that when statistics started, and this is the bit where you might want to contradict me, but as far as I know, the term was first used in the 18th century, and it took some time to become a discipline in its own right. And I do know something about statistics in the Victorian times, as I've done quite a lot of research into Florence Nightingale and her part that she played in data. So people, as far as I know, were sceptical about statistics and had differing opinions. So Dickens picked up on this in Hard Times, talking about the deadly statistical clock in Bradshaw study. And Nightingale had an awful lot to say on the statistics that she was working with and the people that she was working with, a lot of whom she basically didn't think were very good. So there was a lot that was going on. There was a lot of good stats that was going on, but there was also a lot that wasn't very good. So Nightingale said the British Army had an extraordinary method, or no method, of keeping statistics, which I quite liked. And then William Farr, who she collaborated with, said statistics should be the driest of all reading when talking about introducing data visualization. So that's just a bit of background, as it were. So moving on to data science. As far as I know, the term was first used in 1960, so not very long ago, as a substitute for computer science. Then became more widely used in the 90s in various conferences, and the Journal of Data Science itself was born in 2003. Famously, the Harvard Business Review talks about the data scientist as being the sexiest job of the 21st century. So, of course, when I was asked, when I joined Sainsbury's Argos, so what role do you want? I mean, they talked about what I would be doing, but what do you want to be called? Data scientist sounds rather good, because, you know, who wouldn't want to have the sexiest job of the 21st century? And then I thought it would be useful to define what I mean by data science, because I'm aware, as we've already heard, there's a lot of different meanings behind data science. So this is my definition that I've basically made up, but based on my experience. So I'm saying that data science is about using scientific methods, and by that I'm talking about statistical, mathematical, computational, and OR comes into that, to gain business insight from data to inform and optimize process. And for me, that's important. It's all about finding something out for a reason, for a purpose. So what's basically the problem with it? What are the errors? What are the miscommunications? Why isn't this necessarily working as well as it could at the moment? Again, just my thoughts on this. Firstly, a lot of managers don't know what data science or machine learning is. And I need to sort of say that I'm not talking here about Sainsbury's Argos specifically. I'm talking about numerous companies. So in my role, I've been very, very privileged to meet people from a wide variety of companies, and I've also talked to a large number of recruiters. So what I'm saying applies to a lot of businesses. So in general, I find that a lot of managers don't know what data science and machine learning is. And they don't have numerate backgrounds. You know, a lot of people I've met who actually might be quite senior in corporations in charge of data in some shape or form do not have numerate degrees. A lot of them see it as a sort of a magical thing, mathematical magic, and they will actually say, go and weave your magic with this bit of data. You think, oh no, this is not what I'm about. And the fact that they don't know what data science and machine learning is, you know, I've had people say, but we just want machine learning, we just want machine learning, and they're kind of desperate for machine learning, but they don't know what it is. So yeah, businesses think they must have data scientists doing this magical stuff. And recruiters are out there trying to recruit for these positions, and that's basically what they've been told to do. And you know, there are definitely problems. You know, with machine learning, for example, it's been in the news. Computers actually, obviously, they're learning from the data that you give them. So the machine learning algorithm is only going to be as good as the data you feed in. So examples I'm thinking of to do with, there was something in the news recently about people wanting to sift university student applications using machine learning, and about sifting applications for job interviews using machine learning. But the problem there is it learns from our original biases. So if you want, you're sort of thinking, oh, well, the machines will be fair. No, they really won't. They will learn from the prejudices that have been there before. So it will actually reinforce previous patterns. Now, okay, in some cases that might be good, but in many cases that won't be. That's dangerous. And we've got to be careful about what data we're using, you know, giving the wrong sort of data, or just having incomplete data sets, or just not quite knowing where your data is, which might sound strange, but I mean, trying not to say too much that will get me into trouble, but I've certainly been aware of companies where they have numerous data sets that are saying the same thing, but they don't all agree. And you know, you'd be surprised that if you want to know how much a product was sold for on a particular day, or how many items were sold on a particular day, you'd think that was quite easy to find out, but it isn't. And you kind of think, why can't I find this information out? And I'm reminded of something, again, I'm sorry I'm mentioning Florence Nightingale again, but I just think she's wonderful. She said she compared the statistics from 6 different official sources and none of them agree. This discrepancy, she said, shakes one's confidence in their accuracy, something I can totally identify with. I wanted to talk about one sort of particular example to do with retail, which I think explains, it's useful to have your timer and then what starts it. Gemma, I don't know when I started, so if you want me to stop, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to talk about one particular example from retail that kind of explains a bit where I'm coming from. So, in terms of retail, I'm talking about general merchandise, so not food or particularly clothes, but just sort of general things that people might buy. And what retail companies want to know, perhaps, is, for example, I mean, it's all about forecast. It's all about what's going to happen in the future. So if you're a large retail company with a network, say, in the UK, and you've got numerous stores and you're selling numerous different products, you might want to know how many black kettles you're going to sell in Scunthorpe tomorrow. You might want to narrow that down a bit more and say, well, actually, I want to know how many black Morphy Richards kettles I'm going to sell in Scunthorpe tomorrow. That would be kind of useful. And this is called, we're looking at this by what's known as SKU store day. So individual stores on an individual day, and a SKU standing for storekeeper unit, which is basically the product. So how can you find this out? How can you sort of do any forecasting? Well, I mean, there's loads of different techniques, and in fact, the finance industry, I think, has done a lot, obviously, on forecasting. I think a lot of those methods are relevant. But something you could do is to throw an awful lot of data at a machine learning algorithm and let that sort of sort it through and work it out. But something to note is that if we're looking at individual products in individual stores on individual days, realistically, how many of those are you going to have sold? So Scunthorpe, Wolfie Richards, Black Kettles might not have sold any today, might not have sold any yesterday or the day before, losing track of what days I'm on. Might have sold one, say, on Saturday, maybe one on Friday, but then none the rest of that week. So your data is going to be full of zeros, a lot of zeros, and a few ones. Obviously, with some fast-moving lines, key lines, you're going to get, it being more densely populated, but a lot of retail data, zeros and ones. Throw that at a machine learning algorithm, what's going to come up? So, people doing this might then come back and say to you, but it's likely then that, our algorithm says that you're not going to sell any of these tomorrow, or the next day, or the next day. And you can see that statistically, probabilistically, that's probably correct. You're probably not. But actually, if you don't stock any, then you're probably definitely not going to sell any. And so you could get into a bit of a vicious circle where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and your business goes under. So sometimes you don't want to be, the maths and stats on its own isn't necessarily going to give you the best business answer. Yes, you want to use maths and stats, but you also need to use business knowledge and common sense and say, well, actually, we probably need to stock a few more than we think we're going to sell, just in case we sell them, etc. So what I'm getting at is this is complex. It's a complicated problem in retail, and business knowledge is key. But there are a lot of good things that have happened, and I haven't got time to go into too many, but just a couple of really good examples of machine learning. So one, I don't know whether you've noticed, but Google Translate has got a lot better, I think, recently. And that's partly because of various new sort of algorithms in the word embeddings sort of sphere that have been used recently and are giving some very, very good results. And similarly, in terms of recommendations. So I don't know whether you particularly noticed, but certainly 5 years ago, if you bought a camera on Amazon, the next day or the day after, they say, do you want to buy a camera? And you go, no, not really. I've just bought a very expensive camera. I certainly don't need another. Whereas now, I think they're much better at giving more sensible recommendations based, obviously, on other people's purchasing history. Something that doesn't quite fit into my talk, but I came across it and I just wanted to show it to you. I think one of the issues is that it's difficult in businesses of any size, where you've got some people who know the maths and some people who don't, some people who know where the data is, some people who don't know where the data is, but they're supposed to be working with it. And I've seen loads of these sorts of diagrams, and I've been talked through so many, and you think, no, this doesn't really work. But this one actually I thought was really good, in the sense that it talks about the data engineer, who's the person who needs to know where the data is, and ideally get it for the data scientist, data analyst. And then you've got the data scientist, and I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs, but the main thing here is this little bit work that's shown here. So the main bit there is the light blue circle, which says stats, statistics and maths. So obviously the data scientist needs to know stats and maths. And then what I also liked is the interaction with the business stakeholder who also knows statistics and maths, which in my experience isn't necessarily the case, but I think that's great as an ideal. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to talk about. So just in terms of concluding, sort of showing you where I'm at in terms of this debate, if you like. So statistics versus data scientist. Is this just the Emperor's new clothes? I'd say no, but also yes. And I think that data scientists need the mathematical rigour and business knowledge to know the difference. Thank you.
I'm going to start by introducing the first theme for us to discuss. Actually, I'm going to start by letting Alan introduce himself. So if we start from this end.
Yes, good evening. My name is Alessandro Provetti. I am an academic at Birkbeck College, where I manage an MSc program in data science, which has an evening schedule. Therefore, it is appropriate for people who work already in business or professionals.
Hi, I'm Kate Land. I'm the data science advisor at an investment management business, which I also co-founded. My roots in data come from originally being an astrophysicist, where I got to work with sort of large data and postdoc, and then I moved into the quant finance space, worked on algorithms and predictions for financial markets, and then I moved around in a few different spaces. And currently working in startup investment management business.
I'm Hilliam. I'm a lecturer at the Open University. We look after quite a few different degrees down there, but we've just started this October a degree in data science. So that's probably where some of my interest lies in this as well.
So we did have one other panellist, so we're a bit unbalanced because we have 3 data scientists and 1 statistician.
Oh, no pressure then.
And I reckon there might be a few in the room. So don't feel lonely. If there's any fisticuffs, we'll support you. So to start this discussion, is to make it interactive. If you've got a mobile phone with you, let's just hope some of you have. If you can go to slido.com and just Google Slido and it will take you there, then you can take part in our vote. So if you go to slido.com, do you want to join in? No. You can.
Oh, well, I can't do 2 things at once.
Okay. When it asks you for a password or something similar, you need to put in that number there, and it will take you to our particular poll. Then the question will appear on the screen. You'll vote with your answer, and the votes will come up as people are voting. It won't give your name. It won't show who said what. So it's completely anonymous. So is it working? Okay. So let's start the first question. So just to introduce the first question, sorry. It's interesting you say, Rachel, about the Open University, because I was browsing through the web yesterday, and I found on Exeter University website, who I thought might have something about this, that they are very pleased to claim that they have these new courses for students attending in September: BSc Data Science, Maths and Data Science, MSc Data Science, MSc Maths and Data Science, and they make Exeter the 3rd Russell Group University and the 1st in the south of the UK to deliver undergraduate programs in data science. And they go on to talk about why they do this and blah, blah, blah. And they said they've also got a new postgraduate course, MSc Applied Data Science and Statistics, being launched in 2019, which makes Exeter the only university to offer a course this specialised. So it's clearly being seen as something which, is sort of separating you from the rest. So there's obviously lots more effort going into getting data science into a well-understood place. But meanwhile, while this good work is going on at universities, people are currently applying for jobs, people are currently acting as data scientists, and there's lots of issues with employers not knowing who to recruit, people calling themselves data scientists, claiming massive salaries because they've got the skills no one else has. As Noel-Ann said, I even had a conversation with a recruiter last week who was trying to thrust a new graduate who had about 6 months experience and telling me I needed to offer him 50,000 because he could program in Python, and therefore that's what everyone was getting these days, new graduates. And I said, well, what can he do? And he went, he can do machine learning. And I said, okay, so what else can he do? And he went, well, machine learning. Mm-hmm. So we went on like this for a while. And then you've got people at the other end of the spectrum, like Noel-Ann and Tom Watson on the brain, Tom Smith from the Office of National Statistics. So, and I'm sure people in the room. So let's just have a look. Let's try again. So, the first question, do you think there's a need for accreditation of data scientists? Cast your votes now, by X factor. Oh, shows what the numbers are doing. Okay, so a bit of a mixture between yes, definitely, and maybe not sure. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to our panel, and so this is the first thing we're going to discuss. Do you think there's a need for accreditation of data scientists? So, is there anybody who'd like to start with their opinion?
I think it's really good to kind of try and focus on what the problem is before. That's kind of talking about the solutions, and it's good to think about what the accreditation might try and solve. Because there definitely are some of it. You can see different solutions to different problems. Because you talked about anyone can be a data scientist these days. They've done a little bit of Python on their own and do an online course, and then put data science on the CV. And that is happening. And it's not malicious necessarily. Some of that's quite good. It's people being innovative, and lots of people being able to self-train to just be good. But what problem does it then cause down the line? And it causes a problem for businesses, doesn't it? It causes a problem because businesses want to recruit good data scientists. They can't necessarily tell. It's just a very long and laborious process if no one's very easy to distinguish the experienced people from the inexperienced. And so I guess that's one of the problems is that, that puts a cost on businesses, I guess. It also causes them to kind of fail initiatives. So I think that's, the cost to businesses about people not being very well-defined skills is a problem. But I'd say sometimes the problem is that the business hasn't worked out what they're trying to do. So accrediting data scientists is only half the solution. Businesses keep just trying to do magic. And if they keep saying, well, I just want some people to do magic, fine, well, you get people who keep going and going to magic. And they maybe need a better, clearer technical strategy. So anyway, that's just like kind of one thought is before talking about and a kind of solution. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Are we also trying to solve maybe people getting rid of poor quality courses? Is everyone throwing up? It's good universities throwing up data science courses, but are there also kind of bad ones? And are there like people profiting online by generating courses? And it's just ripping people off, and is that causing a cost to young people and their potential? And for that's not necessarily an accreditation system for the person, it's maybe an improvement process for a course. So, I think it's really interesting to think, well, what are the problems being caused by the hype in the field at the moment? And then, so I'm being a bit
no, it's fine, because this is really just a discussion going.
Yeah.
You have touched on some of the other things we've talked about, but I think it'd be interesting to get, when I listened to your talk, Noel-Ann, one of the things that struck me was that actually if you'd have substituted lots of every time you wrote data science, you'd written statistics or statistician, you could have given exactly the same talk, more or less. Because statisticians do machine learning, statisticians interface with data, interface with the client, have to be numerical, have to be able to explain things, have to understand the data they're looking at. And so for me, one of the big things is that because statistics, and you touched on it, has been out there a while, and years ago, statistics was actually what we're grappling with now, with the climate science quotes. No one really understood it, no one really knew what people were doing, so it's a bit of a mystery, so it was misused and in many ways. Is that actually not just the same as what's happening now, but now it's data science? Is it the same job? Is it, where does it differ? It did strike me when I was listening to you that actually I could repeat this talk as a statistician.
I see. I really agree with you. I thought you made it clear it differs. It was about,
For me, it differs in that because I just know that I'm not a statistician. There's just so much about statistics that I know I do not know. And so I think that's where I particularly see a difference. And I've taught operational research. I see myself more as someone who knows about OR. But where do all these disciplines start and finish? I mean, I think that's a very, very grey area.
Yeah.
And talking about OR, I was just looking up on here, because as far as I know, the OR Society, their analytics stream have links with a body that does accreditation for for people involved in the analytics area, which obviously includes many data scientists. So there is some sort of accreditation out there that some people are going down. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues is, what is the difference between mathematics, statistics, OR, data science, and you could draw a lovely Venn diagram, couldn't you?
I think there's kind of a difference, not so much between data science and statistics, but how we just look at data these days. So I think, it's not that many years ago that we would have talked about the real problems in terms of designing experiments and how we would collect data in order to be able to answer those questions. So, I worked for quite a long time as a medical statistician, and much of my time there was talking to clinicians about what was the question we were trying to answer, and therefore what data should we collect to answer that question. Whereas now, partly because I'm writing courses for data science, I find myself writing much more about kind of the data that comes from citizen science sort of places, where I have that worry that you were talking about where are the gaps in that data set. So it's not necessarily that all the data's there and I've collected my experiment in a nice way, so it's going to be representative of what I might think of my population. So how do I deal with that? So I'm not sure it's so much about statisticians versus data scientists, but just the way that we have data now probably makes it a different sort of discipline.
Okay, going back to the question that was posed to the audience, my opinion is in favor of an accreditation process for individuals who seek to become accredited professionals, rather than accrediting the university courses that prepare people for data science professionalism. Also because several departments, several traditional disciplines could be offering them. Okay? Obviously, departments of statistics and mathematics, as well as computer science. And I am aware that some in management are also thinking about offering a university education in what they call data science. So I think it would be easier in a sense to have it as a professional certification, and I believe the Royal Statistical Society is in the best position to actually create and facilitate this type of accreditation. In computer science, there is a British Computer Society, but what is actually relevant in terms of accessing a certain level of professional responsibility is specific accreditations that are managed by private companies like Oracle, Microsoft, etc., which offer their own accreditation on their own software for the key positions that are database administrator and network manager, position that you don't want untrained graduates to access, so they provide that filter. So this status of accreditation in computer science, in my opinion, is unsatisfactory. So in this sense, probably it would be better if the Royal Statistical Society, considered this in a sense as a new field or a second professional body of experience, because really I was trying to see how computer science would fit in your narratives. Seeing from my own point of view, I'm a trained computer scientist, there are also differences in method which are not going to be reconciled soon, or by one side taking over the other. Because in statistics, the way I understand it, it's good to have a good sample. The data is always sampled, no? Okay. And it will always be incomplete and noisy, so statisticians from the beginning consider this scenario. And the key technique, the key concept is significance. In computer science, there is a lot of data. The data is complete, is locked. So if you analyze like web traffic, there is an assumption, the data is complete, there is no noise. We have everything, except that a very low quality, very low individual significance of each number. Okay. Scalability issues, of course, are everywhere. And also, what is significance for statisticians and the crucial experiment for physicists, or the proof for the mathematicians, in computer science is the demo. In other words, you are not sure you can do a certain activity with the computer until some smart people actually creates this application and they show it in a demo. Afterwards, everyone takes up. Okay? So there is a difference in method. Computer science is more experimental in a sense, and it is more open to contributions from unlikely places or unlikely players. In my opinion, a good data science education should allow both, or expose students to both. This is my feeling of this topic.
So is there anyone from the audience who wants to talk about the significance issue, maybe?
Hi, my name is Dominic Sutton. I'm Chief Data Officer for an open source data company and spend a lot of time working in this field. So the first thing on accreditation, I'm one of the maybes, because depending on the source you look at, some people define 13 different types of data scientists. Some sources are now up to 25 different types, depending on the focus, the skills, the background, the technology, the domain. In fact, the one that I usually use is the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist. It's 50 grand a year. Which actually is very true, because every day I get about 12 emails coming through with recruiters trying to punt potential data scientists, and usually they're engineers. They will list a series of software programs that they can use. Usually a lot of them are database, SQL and the rest. But you don't often see statistics, mathematics, business. Certainly from my perspective, the thing that makes a data scientist not an engineer or not a statistician is that you have to have exposure to statistics, absolutely. You must have exposure to coding and computer science to understand the data and how it can be used. But you also have to have exposure to business. You have to understand the domain and the context. If you don't have any of those, you shouldn't be a data scientist. But that makes the problem even worse, because every domain will have a different set of skills. So hence, I'm very dubious about, in theory, yes, accreditation is great, it stops the charlatans. But someone who's a charlatan in one business could be a genius in another. How do you know?
Any thoughts, Al?
Yeah, I totally agree about it being about the domain and being, in fact, having impact. And I thought it came across when we talked as well. It's about embedding maybe statistics, but within a process. It's about understanding the impact that you're going to have. I always think, I've worked in places where we've got some statisticians and they answer a very, very specific question very, very well. And I've also been in those meetings with the people in business saying, well, now what am I meant to do? What is the action I'm meant to take on it? And I've found that a data science project usually involves some statistics somewhere, but then it's a whole load of other things. What's the action that we should take from that? What's the value it's going to have? So I think it's the role of a data scientist or a senior data scientist to kind of, it's about embedding data in a decision process. Or I think data science is all about the discipline of making data useful to the business. And it's as simple as that. It might be just that, Bob just needs this data on a Tuesday when he's going to make a decision. It could be as simple as that. It could be fitting some very, very complicated model. And I completely agree. The first thing data science needs to do is understand what the business is trying to do and understand where technology or data could make money for the business. It could be making a decision quicker. It doesn't have to necessarily be better. So statistics plays a role sometimes, and sometimes it plays a huge role. Sometimes the value that can be unlocked by data in the business is very much a statistical problem because you're trying to do forecasting. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a technology problem. Sometimes it's like, just get everyone looking at the right numbers. You talked about just trying to do some really simple things. I worked in banks where you've got all these different departments trying to come up with the same number, and they all come up with a different one. That's just the technology problem and a database problem, and I think that's all data science.
But do you think that's actually, because the job you're describing as a data scientist is actually what I did when I was called a statistician in a pharma company. So perhaps the difference is that we're talking about doing data science and doing statistics and being a statistician and being a data scientist. And actually, I think that the overlap is massive, because as a statistician, I would never think it was my job to rock up to the table with a model I've just created and say, there's the numbers, see ya. You know, my job is to understand the problem, my job is to check that they really know what the problem is and that they're finding the right solution. I use the statistics.
Well, maybe it doesn't work with good statisticians like you guys.
I think that's the thing. So I think there are statisticians who literally do just plonk the data on the table and say, well, I hope you understand it.
Yeah.
But certainly in the last 10, 20 years, the push in the companies I've worked at is that statisticians need to be consultants. They're there to use the data, to get the models, to answer a business question. And so they have to have understanding in the business context, they have to be able to explain, they have to have techniques to be able to visualize the data. So actually, for me, I'm now thinking I might be able to be a data scientist. But maybe it's actually that everyone is doing the same thing, but some people are calling it one thing, and other people that I don't know what data scientist is, but actually now I think I probably do. You perhaps didn't know really what a statistician does because you're only judging it on the ones you meet. Same with me. And so, which is back down to this communication. If between us, we can't even suss out what the difference is. No wonder the employers and the recruiters and the general public are actually having a bit of a game. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to comment on the different roles? Any statisticians here who think they could easily be data scientists now they've heard more? And vice versa.
Good evening, my name is Jennifer. I'm a statistician and a public health practitioner. I also worked as a computer scientist in my previous old job. So I think I've seen many roles in industry and both in the academia based on what was presented about the role of a data scientist. I think some of my colleagues who were called data expert, data clerks, data manager, who's handling clinical trials data, they know nothing about the statistical class, they know nothing about interpretation, but I think they will fall under the data scientist roles that was described. So if we try to accredit them all, then it might be like very specific for each particular field. So it's a little bit difficult for me, like to really relate a data scientist or a statistician is the same. So I'm not really sure if I can, try to visualize like separate accreditation field for data scientists. I think it's really up to the role. Maybe we can call it whatever, other computer scientists or so, but we really look into the specific role of the person, and to accredit the person based just on the title, I think is not really fair for the person. So that's only my opinion.
My name is George Zapatos. I work in the information industry. My background is statistics, my question is sort of related to accreditation. It's more related on the education side. I'm just wondering, would it make sense, rather than having a master's, let's say, in data science, would it make sense to have some modules within the statistics masters about how to deal with large data? When I was a student in my MSc, we had separate courses for frequentists, for basic statistics. I'm just wondering whether data science should be included within the masters for statistics.
So it's like a branch of, it's just another branch of statistics. So if you're writing the course, what do you think?
I think the computer scientists might be quite unhappy about that branding down there. So whether they would be happy with statisticians teaching machine learning, certainly my colleagues wouldn't be, but that might be just the computer scientists at the OU that might not be happy with that. So I think going back to what you were saying about different businesses and possibly being charlatans taken from one business to another, certainly having talked to lots of people that call themselves data scientists as well as different colleagues, I think people take different parts of data science and have a different emphasis on that as well. So I'm kind of just wondering in terms of, do we think there's a need for accreditation of data science? Whether, going back to what you were saying, whether actually the different parts, the different bits of the role of data scientists are probably accredited from completely different viewpoints in there. So we might be talking about, do we want to accredit the statistics bit of it? Whereas I think the computer scientists may be looking at completely different things. And from what you were saying about the business acumen there, maybe an accreditation in a different way. So I think maybe the question is not, do we think, is there a need for accreditation of data science, but what is it about the data scientists that we're really trying to accredit? And I think that kind of goes into that question about the MSc, putting a module on data science into the MSc. I'm having enough problems at the moment trying to decide what goes into a whole undergraduate course, let alone one module for an MSc. So, and when I look at other data science courses, there's very, very different focus on what that data science course is. So I didn't really answer the question at all. I just wanted to.
No, but you just gave me more questions, so that's fine.
I think I'm not going to say answer your questions, I'm not going to say exactly answer, but just to comment on it. I think it depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to make the students from that programme more employable, then I would say, controversially maybe, that any university degree, undergrad or postgrad, should perhaps now incorporate something to do with data, because let's face it, most jobs out there have got a lot of data within them, even if we're not just talking about, mathematical statistical analysis of data. So, I mean, I'm very much of the opinion that I think an awful lot of people need a lot more understanding about data. So should there be a module on data in a Masters on Statistics? Yeah, absolutely. But I think there also should be in an awful lot of degree courses.
So it kind of leads me on to my next poll, which I've managed to get working with these. So let's just to get your opinions. Who can or should inform employers and the public about the difference and the similarities in skill sets of statisticians and data scientists? Because clearly we haven't really even agreed amongst ourselves, because it's clearly very job and industry specific. So it'd just be interesting to see what people think. So I think you can just go to the next poll. Does it work?
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Okay. So cast your votes. Oh, right.
Selection bias.
The audience might be slightly biased.
Possibly, but as long as we understand the bias, that's all that matters. No one thinks it should be done on LinkedIn.
It's an interesting question. I think going back to what are the risks of the current situation, I think we're kind of getting the sense that, there's data science roles where, statistics, good understanding of statistics is really, really important, and there might be some that's less important. And really, what we need, people need to know when it's important. I think what you said at the end, you've got to know enough to know, because I'm not a statistician, but I know enough to do what I do, and also to know when I'm out.
It's that you're not a statistician. Do you mean I'm not trained and I haven't got a piece of paper that says I'm a statistician? If you're doing statistics, and I think this comes back to, I'm obviously doing some data science. I wouldn't call myself a data scientist.
Yeah.
I think this is the problem, is that the two are so closely overlapping that people are confusing what you're actually doing and what it's called with what my job title is or what my degree is in.
Yeah.
And I think this is the danger, is that employers are trying to recruit people when usually the person hiring them is first of all someone from HR, hasn't got a clue either what a number is half the time. So where do they start? And I think this is the problem, is that it's not necessarily, once you get in the job, you work out what you've got to do and what the company wants, but how are businesses actually finding the right people? And then when they've got the people, how are they sure, if they don't know themselves, that the person's doing it right?
Yeah, well, one of the problems we're seeing, we talk about like literacy of everyone, everyone should be a little bit literate in maths and data, but also, we need businesses trying to do something technical. They need to have a senior technical person, and so I guess one of the things we push for in the data science section of the RSS is leadership positions for technical people. You can't be trying to roll out a data science initiative without the senior technical person. It's not going to work. You couldn't run a hospital without a doctor should be managed by a doctor's kind of thing. So this idea that you can hire technical people without someone understanding the discipline, I think that's part of the problem. The idea that we accredit everyone, make sure they're well trained, that's part of it. But you've got to have someone in the business who understands what they're trying to do with those people, I think. So that's more.
The problem with that is, even at the RSS, we regularly get people who apply to become chartered. They've done some statistics, and the referees they put down are Professor of Physics and Head of their department, because there are no other statisticians that they work with. So the reality is, yes, that's nice to have, but if we can't even charter statisticians who've got all the, looks like they've got the right experience, but they're just telling us that. How do we know? Because the person they're getting to validate them is not a statistician. Yeah. So I think in employment, I don't think every business is going to have somebody senior, because that's why they're recruiting. Who recruits the senior person?
Well, the first hire is the hardest one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think a good metaphor here could be seeing what happens to engineering studies. If you look at civil engineering, the way university education civil engineering is structured is practically the same everywhere. Okay, there is a charter system for civil engineers everywhere in the world for a reason. If you are about to design bridges, houses, transport systems, you need, society, employers need to be satisfied that you have followed a certain technical or professional path. Not so for other disciplines of engineering, such as computer engineering, in which there is no charter. You submit yourself for your skills, for your experiences, and then this is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. At the border, let me bang on this professional certification. Database administrator, network administrator have discharge duties that are so crucial to the functioning of a company. There you find the certification. So, in my opinion, certification should be where it is needed. So, I imagine there could be like a larger set of people who are professional data scientists, or maybe a restricted number of people, especially in like personal data, ethical issues about personal data and clinical data, issues about which could benefit from a proper charter system and certification.
Okay. Anyone from the audience?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, me again. I'm afraid I'm terribly cynical about this, but we say we should inform employers. They just won't understand. Because they don't have the numeracy to be able to understand the arguments. And anybody who listens to Radio 4 on a bad day can see just how inhuman even well-educated people are. And it's deeply disappointing. And I'm not just referring here to data science or statistics. I used to be an economist then. And I used to work in the rooms. And it's appalling how people are employed to build models, to develop derivatives, to sell these, with huge amounts of money involved. And the people who ultimately sign off on whether or not these will be perfect have faintest idea what to do, how they're calculated, what their impacts. And the proof of that is the 2008 to 10. There's the people who fire these things out, which were usually very, very good ideas, just hadn't a clue what they actually meant. And it's exactly the same with this. So you can put the stuff out there, but even people you think should understand what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, in the kind of computer science IT world, it's better because there's a certain amount of knowledge about data, about systems, about technology. But when you move into pure business, into sales, it's boring, quite frankly, as someone who works with these people all the time. And we can try, but whether they have an impact, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
And I suppose that's my view, is that when we say inform employers, I mean, and when I talk about accreditation, I'm basically trying to get that point across, that they don't understand, they're probably never going to understand. So is there some kind of way we can kind of brand data scientists of a particular level so that they at least know I'm getting level 1, and I'm getting someone, is there a way we can come up with some kind of tool, be it accreditation, be it some kind of definition, be it some way that people can easily understand, oh, I need somebody to just tidy up my data, oh, that's called a so-and-so. There's like a list somewhere where you can look up what job is it that I need doing, and they should be called this. So that when you get a CV, and I was telling somebody earlier, I had to give some training to a company where I was training their analysts. And when I went there, I was giving them some basic statistics. When I got there, I had 2 people on the course who'd never used Excel even, and they, by their own admission, said I was terrible at maths at school, I didn't even pass GCSE. So I said, so what do you do as an analyst? Because they wanted to learn some statistics. And they said, when we get the reports, we read through the reports that come from a different department in America, and we read through, and if there's anything in there that we think is unusual, we write that in a report. But their company calls them analysts, so if you leave that company and on your CV it says I've been an analyst, and you go somewhere else, you can apply for analyst jobs now, because you've been doing it for 2 years. You then go to the next company and they're expecting you to use SAS and to write your own code, and it's not going to work. So it's this kind of, how do we help people identify what they've actually been doing, so that there's a common language for all?
So I think that is a very important point, because I've certainly seen data scientists move around companies, and you're sort of thinking sometimes, do they really know what it is they're doing, or is it just that they've kind of done something sort of data scientisty in one company and then got to the point where they think, okay, I've reached the limit, and then moved somewhere else? And I think this is quite dangerous.
It's dangerous to end up in a situation where they start making quite important decisions, don't they? They're analytics and go somewhere. We did an event like this a couple of months ago, and an example was given about some data scientists in the Home Office who were starting to write machine learning algorithms based on interview tapes, and they were getting people actually deported based on some kind of crazy algorithm that the detective someone would like based on their interviews. And there's something about the danger that people call themselves a data scientist and kind of bypass being maybe really measuring the rigour of if they were going more like a statistician, what that meant. You wouldn't be hired as a statistician without something a bit like a statistics degree. You can get hired as a data scientist, end up in a position where you have some impact. So that's definitely a danger. You shouldn't be having someone without a statistically rigorous background in a situation where they're actually doing statistics.
And I think possibly in 10 years' time, we wouldn't even need to have this debate, because actually by then, the people doing will have done these data science degrees, they'll be everywhere, so people won't be hiring someone to do data science unless they've got a data science degree, like the statistics world, and so it would be easier, but it's really what we do at the moment now to help people and guide and get people in the right jobs and get people to help them.
Yeah.
That's where I see the problem.
And my concern is in the meantime, there might just end up being a massive backlash, because you get a lot of companies doing data science initiatives which are terribly misguided. They're throwing money, they think magic's going to happen. The expectations weren't realistic, and so then they go, this is all rubbish, this data science thing. Oh, I'm not doing that again, I'm just wasting all the people. And so you get this kind of, it just all backfires, and it all gets given a bad name. So hopefully, we can all kind of steer through, calm the hype, get somewhere before there's some terrible outcomes implemented. There's another financial crisis, or everyone just gets fed up with data and goes back to making random decisions based on a whim. There's some really good things in data science, but there's also, in this kind of thing.
We had a comment. Can we?
Yeah, one more comment as well. Following on from what we've just discussed, remembering that this is a non-regulated profession, so therefore there is a lot of room for scope movement. But also, it's not just in professions where individuals are accrediting themselves, if you like, as analysts and data scientists, but also I've seen evidence of degrees where they are statistics degrees, and they've literally just informed us that we're changing the title to a BSc in data science. The course itself hasn't changed, but yesterday, if you qualified for this degree, you've got a BSc in statistics, whereas tomorrow you've got a BSc in data science. So without an accreditation or form of recognition from someone such as the RSS or another body, what else can be done to ensure that you are married in science if it's happening at the educational level as well as the professional level?
Can I give a quick answer to this whole thing? We test it like you do in any other job.
Yeah.
So if it's data scientist, you should understand the business, you should be able to do basic coding, let's say, or Python, and you should be able to understand basic statistics. I remember reading one interview panel where they asked, tell us about the normal distribution. Only 2% of the so-called data scientists could answer.
Yeah. But that you just need someone that's going to go back to my point. You have to give someone technical in the company, and they should be able to hire the right people.
Yeah.
If you don't, you shouldn't be trying to run a data science initiative.
Sorry, can we just have this? Because he's been waiting a long time.
I have worked in the computer industry my whole life, and if I was going to get somebody to make my boiler, I'd want that person to be accredited. However, I've worked for dozens and dozens and dozens of companies, and almost never they ask for accreditation. And I don't see that it gives an advantage. And the other thing I would say is I think, compared to, for example, engineering, the techniques evolve, but they evolve relatively slowly. What we have in our industry is rapid change. You could be doing something and 5 years later it's gone. You're constantly relearning. So to accredit something like that, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, very challenging. And there's also a wide range of applications, wide range of industries, as you've been saying. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I would go along with the companies who are making software, doing the accreditation, because that's more respected. To have a general data science accreditation, I just think you're going to have to renew it every 5 years. And I don't think people are going to respect it anyway. When it comes down to it, it's whether you can do the job when you get to the client. They're not really, they're very rarely asked.
And I think that comes back to your point about the people doing hiring, because certainly, I am chartered. No one's ever asked me if I was chartered. Well, 1 or 2 clients have now since I worked for clients, but when I worked in pharma, who knows? Loads of people were, some weren't. It didn't seem to matter. It certainly didn't stop you getting promoted if you weren't chartered. And actually, some people, if you say to them, "Oh, I'm a chartered statistician," they say, "What does that mean?" So, although we do have this accreditation, it's only really valuable for the people who know what chartered statistician means. But I just think because the statistician role has been around a long time, and people have got to have this stats degree, and that's the qualification that is accrediting you. Whereas with data science, I think we're 10 years behind, 20 years behind. And so it's this, I agree, how you would accredit a data scientist, I wouldn't even want to go there. But how can we kind of control the explosion of non-data scientists calling themselves data scientists?
If you get found out, then
Oh, one there, sorry.
Thanks. hearing you talk about this, the thing that strikes me is that you're describing problems with hiring people. The problem is with incompetent managers and incompetent hirers, as opposed to people who apply for the jobs. Fundamentally, as the gentleman here said, if I was employing someone, I want to test their skills. At the basic level, one of the things I used to do, even with people in the laundry and all things, was ask them to write their name on a bit of paper. I did that so I could test they could write, because actually functional illiteracy is very high in this country, and I don't want to embarrass someone. And you can very rapidly go through a series of tests to work out whether people do. Fizzbuzz, we've all heard this with computer people, for instance, a third of computer graduates can't do it. But the things that you have to test for are for the job that you're advertising for. And the snag with if someone has a degree, say, and one is simply relying on the fact that they have a degree, something that's come to me as a surprise many decades after I did a maths degree was that doing a maths degree doesn't mean that people studied what I studied. A lot of people that I've since come across studied none of what I studied, but they are mathematicians. So the very term mathematician is a smorgasbord of capabilities and training. And that would certainly be true here, when diluted also with the effects of time and the fact that it's all changing. I think getting away from someone being able to wave their trump card, which essentially allows them to say, don't test me because I am a magician, would be actually very good. People should be being hired on the grounds of their competencies, not on their bits of paper.
So maybe actually the answer is not this accreditation system, it's something like giving employers who want it some kind of ideas about the types of things that could go into tests.
Absolutely.
And coming up with perhaps a generic standard test, standard tools that they can use that if they can do these questions but they can't do this, this is the type of role, this is the type of. So maybe it's something like that.
It's kind of happening. I mean, if you talk to people who are hiring a lot of data scientists and know what they're doing, they look for things like Kaggle scores, which is like when people go online and do competitions, data science competitions, and get an official score. There's other sites like that where people can kind of credentialise themselves, and employers do look out for, at least do a filter. You've got to meet the person face to face as well, but the people, yeah, most, I mean, I know the financial company we worked in, we built those are our own tests people have to do. It's the only way. Like, can you come in and analyse a piece of database and talk about it, and it's the only thing you could really do at the end of the day.
In software engineering, the situation is more mechanized in a sense. Because today, one strong advice that myself and my colleagues are giving to computer science graduates mostly is to try joining some open source project, okay, like contribute to existing open source projects, as well as, if possible, have personal presence on GitHub or Bitbucket, in which you can expose some code that you have developed for your own enjoyment or to answer some university coursework and so on. In this way, you come to an interview with a portfolio of your own skills, and these today they tend to be assessed automatically by softwares that, like at night time, run over the myriad of GitHub accounts and projects to see and assess automatically the quality of code. This type of automated assessment of quality probably is a little bit further for data science. However, it's true that one way to answer these concerns in software is to present yourself with your own history of publicly available code, which can be actually assessed independently. None of this probably translates directly into data science, because to have my own portfolio, I should be able to give access to data that is proprietary or private in several meaning of the word. But perhaps we could discuss if there is an analogy that could be exploited in this sense.
I think the issue that keeps coming up is that data science means different things to different people. It starts on a spectrum from computer science and ends somewhere in statistics. And to try and pick, just say yes, you're a data scientist, no, you're not a data scientist, doesn't really make sense. And actually, maybe the education to employers is about talking about that spectrum, educating them where through that spectrum the role they're looking for and maybe some sort of accreditation that defines what parts of that spectrum you're very good at, what parts of that spectrum you're okay at, and what parts of that spectrum you don't know knowledge about. And not calling it one thing, yes or no, calling it many things across the spectrum and trying to define different parts of it might be better before.
Yeah, certainly. Anyone else? I mean, I think one thing that's, to follow on from your point, the one thing that's become really clear to me is that there is still some confusion between the term statistics and as a tool. I would see statistics as a tool, whereas a statistician is a person. And statistics in the hands of anyone, if it's used properly, they can call themselves a statistician. Some are accredited, some are qualified. There's a guy who works for me he's been doing statistics for 20 years. He's actually a chemist. He's a better statistician than many statisticians I've ever come across. But he uses statisticians to answer questions, to inform solutions. And I think that's actually what data scientists do. We all have different tools to do that. But I think there's definitely this confusion in terms of labelling the person as opposed to labelling the tool. So a statistician can use machine learning, a data scientist can use it, but doesn't mean we're different people. But I think there are more often different types of tools that are used by data scientists and some of them statistics. But I think in terms of the role, from what I've heard, there is a massive overlap. And so, yeah, in terms of crediting, it's more about what are the skills and what are the types of tools do you have in your skill set rather than what you call yourself.
Yeah. Most data science initiatives are made up of a team of people, and they all specialise. They don't all do all of it, they specialise. So it is a spectrum. You've got engineering, data engineering, databases, and that's at one end, and then you've got and then you've got some kind of statistics and modelling, and then you've got people kind of more business facing, understanding the problems. And that's all, when all those people know with data and be part of the data science initiative, that if you're going to build up a team, you're going to try and make people specialise. Be like the person who's really strong in the modelling, the person who's really strong in the databases. So I think, it's always a team. There's no such thing as people talk about full stack data scientist, this idea that you do the whole thing end to end. You don't. I mean, I think a data scientist is someone who kind of appreciates the whole system, has worked with teams of the whole system. A senior data scientist would be someone who can kind of help piece that whole thing together and know what you need. But no one person actually does it. That's my view.
If you've got a large enough company, I think the danger comes when you've got a very small company. And I know recruiters who've hired data scientists for a small company when they are going to be the person who's going to actually gather the data, store the data, analyse the data, and give the results out, and they are doing all of it. And obviously they shouldn't be called data scientists, but that's what they are called. And yeah, there's a big danger there. You talked about machine learning algorithms. You know, anyone who can code in Python or R can take a machine learning package, plug the data into it, and get something out. If they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know how the statistical side works, they are not going to get, not necessarily going to get a sensible result.
But I think for me, and this is where the empathy codes comes back in, what you're talking about is actually a problem that has existed for years. So if you talk about a clinical trial, the statistician doesn't collect the data, doesn't analyse it, doesn't clean the data, doesn't write the report. There's a biometrics team, and between the teams, someone collects it, someone cleans it, someone goes out and gets all the errors sorted out. And there's a whole team, and one of the members is a statistician. And it's almost like, and that's probably true in other industries as well. I'm just talking about farming because that's my experience. And certainly now I see that in the food industry where you have food scientists, and it's a similar thing to clinical trials except it's food they're testing. And I think the danger is that data science to me doesn't seem any different, but it's in a business context now. But it's being branded as if it's something that's never been done before. And actually, it's the same thing. You have someone who collects the data, someone who cleans it, someone who analyses it, someone who reports it, someone who relates it to the business problem. but it's being sold as something new. And to me, it's not new, it's just a different application of what other industries have been doing for years. And so it's, how do we get that message across to people that it's not saying it's any less worthwhile because it's a different industry, but it's not some magical new science that's never been done before that suddenly is going to answer all the problems that couldn't be answered before.
I think emphasising what isn't new about it is really, I think that's really important. I think that could be really helpful for the conversation. What maybe is a bit new about the rebrand, when we think about rebranding, is it's causing businesses, I think, to think differently about where they put analytical people, how they organise people, and the structures. And so people can't be siloed. You're kind of IT, and if you're a tool, you're over there, and anyone over here on the other side of IT isn't allowed to touch code or do anything flexible. And so, there's something about businesses really thinking, oh, it's data science, and kind of taking into people who are siloed like that and building them kind of across the business and all like that. And it's causing people to kind of reorganise themselves and put more resources in different places and bring in tools that are not flexible and that kind of thing. And so it is still the same. People have always wanted to make decisions with data. People didn't want to make bad decisions. People didn't want to ignore data. It's always happened. But it's just kind of, there's now more data. Companies are kind of drowning in the data, and that is new. And it's not, for me, I think there should be much more, now there is much more of a need in the business for someone who thinks about what could we do with this data. So I think there's always been people who were needed to come in and answer that question about data. But I feel like there's more need. Businesses are really crying out that more of that strategist person. They not just go with this data. They haven't even got to the point where they've worked out the question. Like if they've got the question, fine. We've always been doing that. But I feel like there's this new. What is new is this like, oh my god, there's definitely loads of potential. We've definitely got loads of data. And it's coming in quicker than ever. And definitely that business over there has got an advantage because they've done something with the data. Help us. And it's that kind of strategy role, which has still always existed, but it's just become much more important, and it can have much bigger impact if it's done right. And so I think that's what's kind of new, is the kind of volume.
It's the access and the volume.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you are doing statistics. None of that has changed. Well, some things have changed around open source programs being available. So that's cool. So yeah, there's things that are new, but yeah, ultimately, just statistics is the same.
I have the same perception that the importance which has generated also this discussion is the fact that companies now believe in data. And from a computer scientist perspective, I have seen the inversion between the importance of software, the source code, and the importance of data. Before, even a few years ago, when I was a student, the software was priced, was imported, was proprietary, etc., and you had to pay to download it. So Microsoft, they even charged students in third world countries to use their Windows 95 or whatever. Now the software, there is an assumption by students that the software is always free and free from bugs. Vice versa, the data is now available, it is locked away. You maybe pay for it or you rent it for your experiments and then you lose access. And companies are super careful about how they share, keep data, etc. Not just to protect themselves from like ethical concerns, which is also a topic, but the fact that the value now is in data. So this is a systemic switch, which I believe in some time is also going to change the way computer science and statistics, the traditional courses, are organized. Okay? So it's not only a question what to do with this new mushrooming of data science course. Also traditional disciplines should revise in view of this.
Okay. So is there any more questions or comments?
I would agree that the same kind of things that we go on for donkeys is. We used to have what it was called decision support systems back in the day, which doesn't use all of the techniques that we use now, but it's pretty much the same. And then it evolved into business intelligence. Again, it was taking data, aggregating data, trying to inform decisions. And now it's evolved into data science. But what I would say, what for me is new in made data science different from what was happening before was this idea of a programmer calling the shots. The program was actually writing the code and making the decisions. But what's new for me is this idea of the data itself being able to generate this insight, and which is why data has become much more important. These new machine learning techniques, data is actually just, if you've got enough of it, it can give you insight without programming even knowing exactly how it's coming back to the decision. And that is what's new, and I think that's why data science has become, that's why everybody's scrambling to collect data and make use of their data. And it's become the new goal. So for me, there has been a change, but also it's more of the same in a certain sense.
Okay. Just one final, just to see if you're still awake, really. Just a bit tongue-in-cheek, this last one. Oh, not that one. How do I get to the next one? See what you think. Oh, there's one person. 4 people. Come on. You need an n bigger than 12, surely. The n is in the top right corner there, if anyone hasn't spotted it. We could do some subgroups there about who said yes. Okay. Well, we are coming to the point where I think we're going to have to call a close. We're okay with that. Okay. Are there any other? I kind of get the feeling that we're almost circular. We haven't answered the question. I think this is the kind of debate that's probably going to go on and on. I think we've perhaps made a few steps forward in the sense that we're all recognising it's very difficult to accredit something which is so broad and so fast, rapidly changing. But I think everyone's understanding that there is a problem, and the problem is largely about communication. I think certainly the idea about helping employers by coming up with some kind of standard tests or types of things that employers who don't know, there are always businesses who don't have these senior figures who are highly numerate. I think there's definitely
They should
some...
hire us.
There's not enough of us. I think there's definitely some room where perhaps people like the RSS or other groups can get involved in coming up with tools. Because certainly, even if recruiters could point employers at these, they can throw 100 people at the company, but then they can say, there's a set of tests available from the RSS, have a look to see if any of them are relevant. I think that's, would definitely help. Is perhaps something the RSS to think about. I don't think we've answered it. Have you got any summary comments?
I got two. Well, the number one is for the Royal Society, please think about taking action, because if we wait too long, there will be like Udacity, Google, Microsoft, someone will come up with a proper certification, which will be conveniently taken in your home with some like YouTube type of interaction, and that will be the end of it. Then you will have this certified data scientist going around, and I feel this is some sort of like privatization. I don't particularly like. The other one, if you could pull up that picture I brought for the evening. So I was expecting this to be a bit controversial, at least to be some, and so
some of the next
I think it's on Firefox. Can you put it on the?
Oh, on here.
Firefox.
Did you put it on? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So this. Okay. Title of the painting the keys. looks romantic. Instead, it is a sophisticated allegory for the alliance of Italy and France in the 19th century. So I thought about bringing it because, my opinion, Italy and France have this alliance, but they are still Italy and France with distinct cultures, immediately recognizable and so on. So in the end, rather than a conflict, it could be exactly an alliance. Statistics will still be statistics with its own scientific foundations, practitioners, and organization, and data science and computer science, I like to add, will still be data science, but within this collaboration that I personally propose between the two fields.
Yeah, I kind of like that, but my worry is exactly what Ricky was talking about. I do know personally various universities that are just changing their statistics degrees to be called data science, and are not actually changing anything in the degree at all, but taking out all the words that have statistics in there, because that puts students off applying, and rebranding them as, you know, analysis and whatever else it happens to be. So literally they are just changing the words and nothing else. So I completely agree with you that I think, you know, we need to think about accrediting the bits that means something to us, and somewhere else probably needs to accredit the other bit of that. But my worry is from a university point of view, we're going to very quickly see data science degrees that probably aren't actually data science degrees. And it's maybe that we should be concerned about, particularly from what you're talking about with the spectrum that really is data science.
There's urban data science done by architects and urban planners. So,
I mean, I actually, to emphasise, when I had a guy come up to me at a conference, it was called an sports analytics conference, and I just went really to see what they did, just pure nosiness. And I was talking to someone in the break, and he said to me, you know, what do you do? And I said, oh, statistics. He said, oh, statistics. He said, oh, well, never mind. He said, you know, if you perhaps do some more training, you could be a data scientist or an analytics expert. And I said, what kind of more training? He said, well, obviously, you're not going to get a lot of business on your website with the word statistics on it because it's so old-fashioned. You just do old-fashioned things. He said, if you go through your website and change everywhere you've got statistics, change it to analytics, you'll get loads more business. Okay? And then just went, and I was left thinking, oh my goodness. But he represented this whole room of people who were all into now sports analytics, which is basically data collection, as far as I can see. And that's what they believe. Statistics is old-fashioned, and it's just the old bits of statistics that no one really needs anymore. But there's a new brand out there, and he said, oh, and I had to put an analytics and predictive modelling. That's what I had to do. Yeah. So I didn't feel the need to educate him there and then. But that's what we're up against. Anybody else?
Can you accredit the cruises? That's something that would be ideal, certainly.
Is this an area where there's a value in getting people together to discuss this from the RSS, BCS, OR Society and the IMA, just before? Probably because they've all got their, yes,
and I think
genuine.
I think that's where we came from with the RSS when we were talking about this. It was a bit like you said, if we don't do it, someone else will. And surely it would be better to do it from an unbiased plan point of view than a business interest to accredit people. And so, but I think that the people on the committee felt that it was broader than the RSS. It, you know, it wasn't so because statistics, as we said, is part of data science, and statisticians might do similar jobs to data scientists in some industries, in some fields, but there's more than just the RSS. So I think that's really good. Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank our panel, thank our speaker, who's part of the panel now, and thank all of you for coming. And if you have got any follow-up thoughts or questions, then what do they do with those? Send them to you?
Okay, so yeah, feel free to contact me at pa@rss.org.uk if you've got any questions following tonight's event. The event has been recorded, as you can see, so it will be available for playback, and I'll be contacting you all to let you know that is available. So if you do feel it was necessary for some of your colleagues, friends that will be of interest, please feel free to send on that link as well. But I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to you all for coming, but also to Gemma for chairing and hosting tonight's event, and also all our panelists and speakers on that as well. So,
And for your contribution.
yeah. So if you give us,
Thank you.
give everyone.